First review of the day is going to be for the film Shin Godzilla. Shin Godzilla is a Godzilla film there that came out in 2016. Decided to do a review for this since Godzilla versus Kong. I mean, Godzilla and Kong, the new Empire, is out right now. Decided to go back, just like we did. We did a review of the OG Godzilla film, Godzilla 1954, there because of the release of Godzilla minus one. Went back and looked at some older Godzilla movie and decided to do the same thing here with the new release of a new Godzilla film. I've been meaning to check this out. I heard a lot about this Godzilla film here, Shin Godzilla. That it's a lot more focused on the humans, not really so much focused on Godzilla there all that much. It's all about the response to Godzilla. You know what I mean? Him showing up. What would be the real world kind of reaction to him? What would be the steps to take to eliminate him, to evacuate the people? What would they kind of do there? The, the lengths that they would go to neutralize this creature. That's what you're basically seeing through most of this movie. You're seeing people in boardrooms. You're seeing people, politicians. You're seeing people dealing with this threat of what's kind of going to happen here. And very much praised this movie is. Like I said, heard a lot of really great things about it, so I was very eager to check it out myself. Was this your first time watching it?
It
Say
was my first time watching it.
Okay, first time watching it there. What are some of your thoughts on Shin Godzilla there?
Well, it's interesting. The movie reminded me a lot of Zero Dark 30 in the sense that it's so focused on being a procedural in a lot of ways. It's almost allergic to having like character for its characters in a certain sense. It's so about the administrative process of dealing with the issue, and I do think that that's interesting to watch. It's like the municipality of it all. I do think that you end up maybe not connecting with a lot of people as in like characters in the story particularly strongly. I think the only kind of big emotional reaction to a death in the film is the prime minister at one point, and it's kind of like, hey, only the highest politician do we really, make a point to say, hey, we feel something about, which is kind of an interesting choice.
Yeah. So here you kind of have three characters that you really mainly kind of follow here and really get most of the dialogues. You do have the prime minister here. You do have the chief cabinet secretary here. And then you also have I think she was the ambassador to the United States there, the one that spoke
Yeah.
English at times there. Yeah. And so you do have kind of those three characters there that you kind of bounce around to. And you see that, anytime that there's a decision being made, they look to the prime minister. It's like, okay, so what do you want to do? You know what I mean? Like, this is what we kind of have to do there. And, you talk about deploying the special defense force there that is in Japan, and then what would, that reaction would be. And then they have to escalate it and go up to the United States, and then kind of get their involvement in all these other countries. So, yeah, I mean, you're kind of seeing a lot of that kind of going on there, with Godzilla kind of being more in the background. And, interesting how it kinda compares to something like Godzilla Minus One, where I would say Godzilla Minus One is Godzilla's still very much the forefront there, I would say also. I mean, the humans are also, I mean, there's really good human emotion there with that movie as well. What do you think kinda some of the differences between, like, something like Godzilla Minus One and Shin Godzilla are?
Well, I think Godzilla minus one is a Godzilla story that is driven by human characters. And I think Shin Godzilla is the Godzilla story that's driven by administrative paperwork, but not really people in a certain sense. Like it's focused in scenes of people. It's human beings communicating and trying to solve the problem, but it's so clinical and lacking in emotion. Whereas I think Godzilla minus one is all about the emotion. It's all about investing in the personal lives of these characters and hoping that these people on the ground make it out. Whereas in Shin Godzilla, I kind of felt like the civilians, the regular people suffering from the situation kind of didn't really have a voice or a place in the story. It was all about the boardroom level, the political level of dealing with the problem. I think that's kind of the big difference for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when Godzilla Minus One, you did see something there was more seeing the people, seeing kind of their reaction to Godzilla, seeing that kind of on the ground level reaction that was there. You don't really get much of that here in Shin Godzilla, more focusing on, like I said, more of the boardrooms, more the administrative paperwork, more of that pencil pushing that you kind of see there. You kind of see that. Um, and, with this, very much, as kinda different times. Oh, what were we gonna say?
I was gonna say they could have beat Godzilla with all the red tape they had in this movie.
Yeah, that's a kind of a big part of this. And with the kind of creature, Godzilla here, different design a little bit with Godzilla. I guess they're leaning more into the lizard, aspect of Godzilla here. I guess is the thinking because here you see more, I guess, like Godzilla transforming. He's not fully formed yet in this, and that's how you get something like this when you first see Godzilla,
I
where
think this
he
is leaning into the Fraggle Rock element of Godzilla.
Yeah, where I guess he's learning to stand upright, and he doesn't know how to do that yet. The effects are no Godzilla minus one. I'll say that for sure. The effects in Godzilla look much much better than this. Uh, and I think sometimes takes you a little bit. I think maybe you would have been better off. I mean,
That
hell,
looks like a sock puppet.
yeah, maybe just putting somebody in a rubber suit like in 1954, and just doing that instead, of doing this. But sometimes, they'll do some stuff like with the buildings falling and then some of the destruction looks pretty decent. What do you think about some of the effects here?
I think once you get like halfway through the movie and you start seeing Godzilla fully formed and kind of finished mutating, that that version actually does not look so bad. I think that actually looks fine. It's not the greatest effect in the world, but it's serviceable enough. It's really just those that first time, maybe two that you see him. Yeah, like that looks much better, I think, than that first sequence where he's slithering around on the ground. I mean, that really does look like an old Jim Henson sock puppet laying around that they were using to slide around. The googly eyes on that. I mean, who thought that was a good idea?
Yeah. So here's the more of the fully formed version of Godzilla that you kind of see here, where he
That
uses
looks much better.
now this looks pretty good. I mean, the city you can definitely tell is a model there. I mean, you can
Yeah,
definitely tell that's very much a model there. And I do like with they use with his atomic breath. As you saw at the beginning, he like splits his mouth open to expand. It's almost something like at a Blade 2 with the vampires, where they kind of open up their whole mouth, split it open there. It's kind of reminded me
I
a
don't
little
know
bit.
if it's an intentional, but also like the nuclear power from splitting an atom. So if he's like splitting, I
Oh,
don't know if I'm reaching on that, but
could be there, but yeah, I mean that's very destructive. And he also, I don't think I've seen it before, where you could shoot from his tail. He also can shoot the atomic bomb from breath from his tail. Have you ever seen that before?
uh, I don't think so. But I've also watched so many of those older ones. It's possible I've just forgotten.
Yeah. And did you see this? Because there was some different options people could have. There's also an English dub, and there's just the sub version, the regular Japanese version. There, we could read the subtitles. Which version did you go with?
I watch it in subtitles. Like I'll watch with like animated stuff. I'll bounce back and forth with English dubs to subtitle depending on just each individual thing. But for live action, I always watch in something in its original language.
Mm, okay, yeah, I watched it in, the subtitle version as well there. Yeah, and so I think there's that difference, I think, between something like this and Godzilla Minus One, different approach there, more of a clinical approach, to this. What were some of your favorite things about Shin Godzilla there?
Um, you know, it's I can't say I loved this. There are cool things here. I think the exploring the process of how you deal with it is an interesting premise. But I kind of feel similarly to the way that I felt about something like Zero Dark 30 that I mentioned before, where like I don't know if I have a favorite moment in here. It was something that was interesting, but I also was never riveted or truly kind of blown away by it either.
Mm. Okay. Interesting. I could kinda see that a little bit there, bringing up something like -1, I think -1 is better there. I mean, for me, I think just it has more of an emotional connection and attachment there. I think the stuff kinda going on here, not to say it's not interesting, I think the stuff of them trying to really figure this out, and them trying to kinda deal with the creature, especially you have this woman right here who I guess is the scientist, there that, that's kinda working with them that figures out a method in order to take down Godzilla there. There is some stuff with that. And with the kind of the other who's the cabinet secretary, who is let me see, let me freeze frame on him a little bit there. Do, 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 do. Oh, it's moving. I think it's messing up right now. But the cabinet secretary, who maybe he's vying for a position to be prime minister after all this is done. You know what I mean? And see what the kind of has that position. So he's trying to put up a strong front there. And you see that they do care about their country, do want to see the preservation of it, and trying all out to actually stop this thing. Of course, like all the messes. They bring out the tanks, they bring out the Apache helicopters. They're shooting this thing with machine guns, with Gatling guns, with rockets, and nothing's having an effect on it. Um, and just getting absolutely decimated. And you do kind of see that, and it's like they want to see an end to this creature there. You just had trouble just emotionally connecting to anybody in this movie, or
I think that's the big thing. Yeah, it's almost. I mean, and I think that's on purpose. It's by design, right? It's done very purposely in a way to be about the technical process of the situation rather than uh, necessarily feeling something for any of the specific people involved. Although, actually, you know what? Thinking about it, there is one moment that did really stand out to me, and that is that character that you just showed, the scientist there, when she suggests that the possibility of Godzilla being radioactive, and then no one quite takes her seriously, and then there's just a couple moments later, they start getting the readings for the radiation, and the kind of the panic that sets in the room, and you can just see it in everyone's eyes. That's a moment I felt some real emotion in, and so that actually is a significant moment I would point out.
yeah. You did have her in there. Yeah, who she kind of discovered some things about Godzilla there. And it's always interesting, I think, to see, sometimes in these, kind of monster movies of the people kind of figuring out like the weaknesses of this creature and how they can use kind of science to defeat the creature here. And you do see that in this film here. But I did hear, yeah, going into this much more of a technical movie about you know, a government's incompetence, I guess, or government response there to Godzilla, and kind of what then trying to break it down of like, okay, what would be more of the realistic, kind of expectations of what would happen there. Um, so I did like that it's very different from other Godzilla movies that I've seen before. Haven't seen a lot so far. I've only seen the 1954, which we did a review for. Then of course -1. Then of course the American Godzilla films, Roland Emmerich one. Then the MonsterVerse films recently. There, you do kind of do have that. But I like that it can be a balance of kind of that of you do have something like this that can kind of come out very much different approach there from maybe other Godzilla movies that we've seen, and then also something like with Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire there, or, something like with Godzilla or, Jaguar Jet Jaguar there, or some stuff like
Yeah.
that. So you do have kind of those different approaches, which I think is good that you have that with this movie there. Um, so do you think that the story that it is trying to tell with Shin Godzilla executes it well there? Um, you know
Yes, I do. I think it does what it's trying to do very well. I can only say that for me personally, out of all the different variations and takes on Godzilla, though I still find it interesting, I'm very glad that I saw it. I think it's one of those kind of really cool movie experiences that I just might not necessarily come back to for rewatching all
Mm.
that many times or very much in the future, just because there was such a disconnect from for the actual characters for me. It was not my favorite engaging story to actually watch.
Mm, okay. Uh, Not that I could kind of see that a little bit there. Just not as kind of engaged in there. I could see that a little bit. And this was directed by Hideki Anio and Shinji Hugachi there. Who did
Hideki Anno is the creator of Neon Genesis Evangelion too, so his name being attached to a live action Godzilla film was a huge deal for like anime fans.
Okay, interesting. And do you kinda see have you seen Neon Genesis Evangelion?
I watched it a long time ago. I actually started rewatching it because it's the runner-up in the poll at the moment. So I started a rewatch just in case it pulls ahead.
Yeah.
Um, but he was also one of the assistants on Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind and I think Castle in the Sky as well. A couple of those first Studio Ghibli movies.
Mm, yeah. Um, and so it's interesting. So you do kinda see a little bit of anime influence here, there that he kinda brings to this movie, or
I think so. Neon Genesis has it has very human characters to follow, but it also does do a lot of the here's the heads of this organization and how are they figuring out how to deal with these kaiju attacks on a more technical level. I do think if we are going to compare Neon Genesis and this Shin Godzilla film, I think Neon Genesis has a better balance of the character and the technical process stuff mixed together. Whereas I think Shin Godzilla is kind of solely focused on that. But
yeah, you know. Maybe there's a draft of the script. He's like, "Why doesn't anybody just get in a giant robot? Why doesn't anybody just do that?"
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
this
you
will
could have
solve
put
everything.
Jet Jaguar in there if you really wanted to.
Yeah, that seems like the solution. Let's just build a giant robot,
Easy, simple.
simple, things like that. Actually, they've been, could have said they've been working on a project, all this time. We've been working on a giant robot project there.
They have a real giant. It can't fight, but it can walk. Gundam in Japan. It's like
Yeah.
actually got
Uh,
hydraulic movement to it.
I was gonna mention that. I think they said they were gonna take that down.
Oh,
They
really?
Yeah, they were gonna take that down, I think. Yeah,
Not
they're
put a
gonna
laser cannon on it.
I guess they were like, "Man, why they doing that, man? I mean, that's their last line of defense right there is the Gundam right there. Somebody can hop in it, yeah, their last line of defense." So if people don't know, I mean, before you used to be able to go to, and I wish I actually saw when I was in Japan, but you can't actually go see a real life scaled Gundam there if you did go to Japan. This is it right here, and you're right, it does actually move and everything like that. So yeah, I don't know how exactly all it works there per se about the technology of it, but it is pretty cool to see it move and everything like that. Yeah, so this is it right here. Have you seen videos of it before?
I have.
Yeah,
It's one of those things it's amusing to me that they actually built something like that in real life.
yeah. So I don't know about all like how long it took to build or the construction behind it. I don't know, but yeah, this was kind of badass there. Yeah. Um, I mean, you're gonna be waiting a little bit to see it kneel and then come back up. I mean, give it a minute, but I mean, it's gonna be going at a snail's pace. But hey, it's awesome when it happens. There,
It's the 1.0. They got to get a couple other models in before it can actually fight in the war.
yeah, this is the base model that you have here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is pretty cool that you have that. But yeah, unfortunately, I think they took it down. Now I can't go see it. But yeah, so yeah, that's the two directors of it. He's also gone on to kind of do some other stuff here. He directed Shin Carmen Rider as well there, which came
Oh,
out
okay.
last year. And he was also the writer on a 2022 movie, Shin Ultraman. There, what
Mm-hmm.
is Shin just like the in Japan?
I don't know exactly what the translation is, but I am like mildly familiar with Ultraman as a franchise, so it's definitely applying some similar naming scheme to them.
Okay, yeah, because I'm thinking is Ultraman, and then also Shin Carmen Rider. Is there like a connection between this and the Shin Godzilla film? I was
It might
wondering.
just be the people working on them because
Mm,
they definitely take place in their own worlds. They're not connected by a plot or universe for sure.
mm. And you also have Shinji Higuchi there, who's kind of done some other stuff there. He's also one of the directors of. He's mostly done kind of you see a little bit of visual effects directing, and he was also one of the directors on Shin Ultraman as well. In there, he's also on that. Yeah. What is some of your final thoughts there for Shin Godzilla there?
Yeah, so I think, like I said, I'm really glad to have watched it. It's something that I do think is very interesting, and seeing how the government body and scientists come together to discuss and analyze and formulate a plan to deal with this problem. I think that's all fascinating, but it doesn't make me want to watch it a second time because there is a lack of character to attach myself to. And because it does seem so focused on the government's role that there's not really a lot of room for the damage to the average person that an event like that causes. And I think maybe I would have liked it a little more if there's just a little bit of a balance with just a little bit more of that. I would still say I'd give it like a high stream it because I do think it's unique, and I think it's doing something that you're not getting in any other Godzilla film, and it's definitely worthwhile for that reason. But just for me personally, it's not going to be the most memorable or engaging take that they've had.
Mm, okay. Very interested at the approach of this. I think that's done. I mean, different from other Godzilla movies that you've seen, which we've mentioned before. I think that's done. Of course, the effects, I think, is kind of one of the more weaker spots in this movie. They don't look really all that good. And sometimes downright laughable there that you have at times there. But I do think that the human performances really sell it here of the threat of this creature, the response to this creature, how much kind of all the red tape that would go into this. I think that's interesting there if you kind of want a different look at your kind of monster movie, a kaiju type film there that there's that option. I still think that probably, I mean, people considered one of the better ones is kind of something like Godzilla minus one. If you also want that great human element plus the great Godzilla effect there, I think that one does a better job at that. Um, but this one also does have a special place at what it's attempting to do, and I think at its attempt at what it's trying to do, it really does well at that. So for that, I would give it I'd give it a tune in. I give it a kind of a strong tune in there. What would be kind of yours there?
I'd say like a high stream it, like not quite a tune in, but on the higher end of stream it.
Yeah. So this film grossed 78 million worldwide, making it the highest grossing live action Japanese film of 2016, the year it came out there, and the highest grossing Japanese produced Godzilla film in the franchise until Godzilla minus one surpassed it in 2023. It
By
received
quite a bit too, right?
yeah, because the I think the final box office with Godzilla minus one. Let me see what the final box office of that was 114.8 million.
Oh
Was
yeah,
final box office there. But
well
then,
cleared that bar.
also with Shin Godzilla, so it received 11 Japan Academy Prize nominations, won 7, including Best Picture and Director of the Year. I guess that's some there. And this was on a budget of 1.3 billion yen there. And let me see, let me convert that into USD here. So that would be equivalent to 8.5 million there. So that'd be equivalent to that.
Well, when that's a pretty low budget ultimately. So as far as what you look at, like special effects in Hollywood goes, so the effects are certainly maybe a little more forgivable when you look at that number, I think.
Yeah. And let me see, what was Godzilla minus one? What was their budget there? Let me see. I think it was also relatively pretty low.
I
Uh,
believe so.
it was between 10 and 15 million that their budget
So
was.
not that much more.
Yeah. And I know a lot of the director, I mean, he was doing everything. He was, directing it, he was writing it, he was producing it, he was doing the visual effects on it, he did the craft service on it, he was the boom mic guy, he was the coffee runner, he was doing
Just
everything.
getting all the Starbucks orders and everything.
Yeah, he was doing everything, for that movie, so, Takahashi, Yamazaki was the, director of Godzilla Minus One. He said he wants to do a Star Wars movie. He said and you can see a lot of that influence in Godzilla Minus One. You see a lot of Star Wars, a lot of Spielberg type movies there. You definitely see an influence on that, in his work. So, yeah, I would love to see him come along and do maybe a Star Wars movie if he wants to.
Yeah, why not?
So yeah. That was our thoughts on Shin Godzilla. I'm finally glad I checked it out. Had it on DVD there. Finally got a chance to watch it there on the good old system. So I gave it a tune in, and Sage gave it a high stream it there. If people want to watch it on streaming, you can do so. Now, there's some options. You can watch it on Crunchyroll.
That's
Um,
where I watched it.
and so there's the option of both the English dub and the sub if you have a subscription to Crunchyroll. And the same thing also with Amazon Prime. I think you have to rent it there. Amazon Prime. Every other place, yeah, it's basically just renting it, like from Apple TV or YouTube or places like that. You have to pay to rent it. But yeah, yeah, I think it's not bad. I think if people want to check it out, wanted something more, a thinking man's kaiju movie, I think this is that for them. So yeah. Shin Godzilla.